Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Let's Get Chattin podcast. I am your host, Josh, here, as always, vibing, thriving, chilling, just doing good stuff. We've got Jennifer with us today, but before we get into it, I do want to announce that definitely by the time this has been released, there'll be a new merch store on all of my socials, so check it out. And the message is stand up, speak up, feel seen, which is something that we all want to sort of vibe with. And that's a message that I personally feel is really good. So stick with that and check it out. It's on all my socials. And as always, like, comment, subscribe. But hey, let's get into it. We have Jennifer with us today. And I want to say Jennifer's had from what I've seen so far, a bit of a mad life and a mad story. So I can't wait to get into it. And at the moment, you have your own sort of life coach thing going on.
Yep, that's true. I'm helping families of addicts now.
That's amazing. And do you know what? Before we even get into it, I will say this touches home with me, like very much so. My mum is an addict. Struggling addict in and out of addiction. My uncle Jamie, who used to be on this podcast with me, is also a recovered addict. Actually, he's like a year sober. So and I got a lot of friends who are in that process. Luckily for me, I'm not going to say I've never struggled with addiction, because I have, but it's usually been of the positive side, i.e. the gym. Like I can't go, so
the socially acceptable parts.
Yeah, exactly. Although I don't think any addiction is healthy, because when you start like pushing your friends away because you want to go to the gym, I mean, it's one of those. But anyway, before I because I will just talk forever and it's not good as a host. So, let's go. Firstly, what I always like to ask, because everybody has a different definition of this. What is your definition of sort of a life coach or a well-being coach, that sort of thing? How would you describe it?
I think for me, the most important thing is to meet people where they're at and just help them navigate as though I'm standing next to them rather than pushing them or pulling them, right?
Yeah.
Just based on my life experience and the things that I've kind of walked through in my life, I am very blessed. I look at that now. Not everybody would say I was blessed, but I'm very blessed to have seen this from a lot of different angles. And so I know what has worked for me. And I am not a therapist, and so I don't get into the nitty gritty of some of that work, but really become more of a guide, or not even a guide, but just like somebody to help you that's been through this before, meet you right where you are and help them navigate this thing.
That's awesome. I have a friend, Dave. He's shout out Dave, I know he listens. He's in recovery. He's in recovery at the moment. I won't say recovering addict, because he will kill me, because he doesn't like the label, which sometimes I agree with. But he was really bad, and he's found that he's very much like yourself. He does like TikTok. He goes live like every day. Hundreds of people watch, and he is just talking from his experience, and people, they love it, and it does help them. So I do think staying away from like the therapist, doctor side of it and just talking to experienced people can really help.
Yep. And again, you look at it, it's either a great thing or a bad thing that I have such wide perspective of this thing from so many different seats, if you will, that I think I find that I can be a world of resources, and just the empathy and compassion that I have for people that are walking through this is just immense.
Yeah, no, 100%. So what we'll do is I'd like to know effectively your story. So if we go all the way back to where you first sort of heard or seen addiction, and then let's take it from there and go for it.
So I come from generations of addiction. Certainly all of my grandparents and my dad was an alcoholic. It was just normalized, right? I come from mostly alcoholism. And so for me, it was quite normal to have a drink not me personally, but the adults around me to have a drink at noon, but while you're on the lake, and then, or every single night when you got home to, let some of the steam off. It was just really normalized for me. And so I didn't really know much difference growing up.
Sure.
I just,
Yeah.
I got a sense that the system was a little broken, right? When you're raised in addiction, like sometimes for some of us, it didn't feel right. It felt contentious. It felt a little bad, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I believe that was sort of everybody's experience because it's all that I knew.
And where is it you're from again? Sorry.
So I'm I was actually born in London, England.
Okay. Wow.
But have obviously spent my whole life in America. My
Okay.
dad worked for a company, and so we moved a lot. So I've had the blessing of being able to live in a lot of different parts of the country. But the root of my family is from a state, Idaho, and
Okay.
we
Yeah.
are in Boise. Yeah.
So with regards to like growing up, you grew up in the States, so right? So when all of this was happening, you were in America, is that
I was in America. Yep.
okay? Because it's funny because I think the British have a massive drinking culture. If anything, probably worse than America. My fiance, she's American, so
Okay.
I know a little bit of both. I spend a lot of
Yeah.
time over there, so I was actually planning on moving over there, but the whole Trump thing has really made that not gonna like be a thing at the minute. I
Yeah.
was
Just
sort of 50-50, but so I am still waiting on my visa though. But yeah, I think that's funny because I think in Britain, England, it's like the drinking culture is crazy. I would say it's worse than over there, 100%. And it is something you see your parents when you're growing up get home from work, have a drink on the weekends, have a drink. And a lot of people, without even knowing, are functioning alcoholics. Do you believe, not to jump ahead too much, but do you believe that the sort of addiction side of it is like a hereditary thing? Do you believe that that's
I do. I believe there's a couple of things that play into it, and the biology of it is, for me, my perspective, absolutely factual. But what also plays into this, because there are people that have the biology that don't actually become addicts. So I think there are other things required that become almost a perfect storm, if you will, in one's
sure?
life in order to sort of catapult the disease. So if I just speak about myself, so I for sure have the biology, but I also have the trauma. So let me talk a little bit about that. 1 out of every 4 little girl and 1 out of every 6 little boy who is raised kind of in that dynamic are sexually abused. And I was sexually abused by my grandfather on my mom's side. Um, so and many of the girls in my family were. And so not only was this dynamic of addiction happening, but then there was this sexual abuse component that was also happening. And again, I mean, 1 out of every 4 little girl, right, that is
And how?
raised like this. And I grew up I wasn't in the trailer parks, right? Like I grew up in a pretty affluently blessed, like from the outside looking in, people are like, I want that little girl's life.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so it wasn't because we were uneducated or didn't know better. None of those things. But it was happening in my childhood. So I had the biology, I had the trauma, which in my opinion is really a prerequisite a lot of the times for addiction. Now, trauma can look
100%.
differently. Trauma can be, I felt like a square peg in a round hole my whole life. And then thirdly, I had the opportunity for substance. So that can be alcohol, obviously, is a pretty easy one. I became addicted to opiates because when I was 29, they found that I had a brain tumor, and so when they removed it, they caused some nerve damage, and so I was
Okay, yeah.
prescribed a copious amount of opiates. And so the 3 of those sort of events catapulted me very, very deep into addiction.
Yeah, I can see that. So, well, understand that. So with regards to like the growing up side of it, we were talking about, you were seeing that, your dad was drinking on in the evenings, on the weekends, and all of that sort of part of it. So I'm assuming that the abuse came from like an alcoholic or addiction side of things as well. Like your grandfather, right? Was this something that happened when he was always intoxicated or under the influence, or?
Yeah, and I don't per se remember that exactly. I don't think so. Although, alcohol was a daily sort of occurrence in my home, right? So when he was there, and we didn't always live with him. Again, we moved a lot as a family, and so it wasn't like I was with him all the time. Um, and in those events, I don't remember him being like trashed or anything. I think
Right.
probably he was just drinking like he would in a normal day. Um, I believe so. He was a twin, and both of he and his brother. My understanding was that they both abused children. So my guess is they had also been abused. So we're talking generations, kind of this thing in my home. And so, as crazy as this is to say, it's almost like nobody knew any different, right? It just happened that way. Um, and
It's yeah, it's excuse my French, it's fucked up because
oh yeah,
people don't understand that what you do to your children tend to do. How many broken homes do you see, or exactly what we're talking about: addiction, alcoholics, drug addicts, abusers. Like, it leaves such an imprint on people's brain, and it's like, I mean, personally, I think you're a bloody demon if you do something like that. You are the lowest of the low, like, um but it is something that, again, it's just, it does follow on, and it kind of, in a way, you're sort of like, you blame them but you can't. Does that make sense?
well, and that's so true for it's the grooming process, right?
Hmm.
It's how people that don't understand the dynamics sit back and go, well, how could that possibly ever happen? Like, why would that happen? And it happens because there's this psychological component to grooming that changes the dynamics of families. And so this has been absolutely true for my life. My grandfather in my home, before we started putting some of these pictures together, was on a pedestal, right? Like, he was the patriarch. He was the guy. Like, everybody loved. My mom was like, that's my, like, she worshiped her father. And part of the reason this has been so hard to heal from as a family is because you have to untangle all of that. You have to make sense of all of that. Like, my mother has had to really question, was her childhood what she thought it was, right? Is
Yeah,
she
yeah.
who she thought it was? And so, sometimes for families it becomes too much. And I think that this is one of the things I have become so passionate about in my life, in changing the stigma of addiction, is that I've met a lot of addicts. I worked in the field working with the addict for 6 years. I do a lot of public speaking and meet with other addicts. I have never not met one addict who didn't have something happen to them. And again, this could be different, right? Everybody's trauma is their trauma. Once something that happened to them, that solution became the solution, like that substance became the solution to, right? And so when you drive down the street and you see a guy that's homeless who's saying, I'm not going to lie, I need a beer, rather than think about him as a loser or somebody just go to work, it's, can we have some compassion and ask the question, like, how did this happen? How did substance become the solution for him?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And for me, if we can start changing the story around why people are addicts, and kind of the I mean the loser mentality,
Yeah, yeah, the assumptions behind it.
assumptions, then I think we can start people can start healing.
Sure. So going backwards again, with regards to like growing up, did you realize that your dad was like an addict, sorry, prior to you having any form of addiction, or was it something that you realized once you had got through it yourself?
No, I knew. In fact, again, a lot of us that are black sheeps, if we're labeled black sheep in our family, I like to call us the truth tellers, right?
Right. Yep.
And people around us are not comfortable with what's coming out of our mouths a lot of the times. And so we're kind of labeled the black sheep.
Yeah.
But there was something inside of my core from the beginning of time, the
Okay.
earliest memories that I have, that this thing wasn't normal or right. I remember, the times of my dad. And let me just say, my dad was my guy. Like my dad and I were like two peas in a pod, right? Like my dad died of this disease in 2015, but he was my guy. And so when I share this with you, I think that that's what was challenging sometimes growing up, was I didn't know how to make sense of all of it, right? But I very distinctly remember the drunk driving times, or the conflict, or that my dad drank a lot. And if any, I couldn't have said to you, I'm going to grow up and be a doctor, or I'm going to have children, I'm going to get married. But I could tell you with 100% certainty that I'm not going to be an alcoholic.
Right. Yeah.
I knew I knew growing up that there was a systemic problem in my home.
It's funny because I'm the same. Like I grew up, and again, I'm open about everything on here. I am, because I'm in the UK. That I have to word things a certain way. So allegedly, my parents smoke a lot of marijuana. Okay. Um, Allegedly, they drink a hell of a lot of alcohol, and that sort of thing. I grew up around all of that. Like police coming through the door, like all of this shit. I went, at one point I was kidnapped over money. Well, say kidnapped. They didn't get me out of the house, but they were trying to. Like it was crazy. I've been through a lot, and so I think I always grew up, and my honest thing was, I don't want to be anything like my parents. That was all I ever said in life is, and I know they listen, mum and dad, I do love you, but listen. I always said I don't want to be anything like them, and they probably would want that for me as well. But I actually moved in with my grandparents, who were the total opposite, completely normal, no, nothing crazy. Although my granddad does like a drink at his older age after losing my nan, but I understand that slightly at the minute. And I just find it. I suppose my question from that is, how did it affect your childhood or growing up? What happened in your life where you were like, wow, or whoa? Was it like arguments or anything like that?
It's hard too, because based on some of my experiences, I have shoddy memory of my childhood. Um,
Understandably.
and my traumatized brain has like created, I think, filled in some of the gaps. And so I oftentimes, even still, I'm in the process of writing a book, and I keep checking in with my mom, like, was that true, or did this brain fill in the pieces of how that all happened? So my father, again, I always wanted, like, the man I loved the most in the whole wide world was a horrible husband. There was a lot of infidelity, a lot of, you know, my mom would report today that he probably didn't talk to her the best and treat her the best sometimes. So there was always sort of this, like, my parents were great partners. So I have an older sister and an older brother, and we were very active. So they were like, you pick this one up at 5, I'll pick this one up at 6:30, we'll have dinner at this time, right? They were great partners when it came to parenting. But I never remember them being like affectionate towards one another or particularly loving in the marriage.
Right.
And so, a lot of my childhood was just feeling alone. I spent a tremendous time alone. My sister and my brother really got along with one another, but again, I kind of always felt like the odd man out. And so I learned very early that isolation was kind of the safest space for me, right? I could be the safest. I could be as loud, as emotional, as obnoxious as I wanted to be. It was always a lot, right? I was always told I was a lot by myself. And it's interesting to me because I didn't become addicted to substance until I was 29. Again, I was gonna do this differently, right? It was the only thing that mattered to me. And then at 29, I had a brain tumor, and I had focused on not becoming an alcoholic. What I didn't focus on was not using substance to be the solution, right? And so as soon as I was introduced to opiates, I tell people the story. I was about 2 weeks out of surgery from brain surgery. We were home, and I was in my bed, and I could hear my husband and my 2 kids out in the living room playing. And I said out loud, as though there were another 15 people in that room, where the hell has this been my whole life? Like, in that moment was the first time in 29 years that I felt like I could take a full deep breath, right? That I didn't care that I had been abused. I didn't care that my dad was an alcoholic. I didn't care that I felt like my mom hadn't protected me. I didn't care that my siblings didn't really like me. I didn't care that I had just had to say goodbye to my 2 children 2 weeks before, and I didn't think I was going to wake up from surgery, right? Like, all of these experiences that I had had in that moment, I was finally going to be okay. And I share people that don't understand what it's like to be in this brain. That was my last moment of choice.
Right. Yeah.
That was it. After that moment, there was no choice for me. There was no moment of, okay, we can still turn this thing around if you go right, but if you go left, you're going to burn it down, right? I was already left. I was only taking left turns at that point. And so I didn't understand. I had been so hyper fixated on not becoming an alcoholic, that I didn't understand until I started using opiates. Oh, this is why people use substance, right? Like this is the solution. If substance isn't the problem, it's the solution to the problem. The problem was all of those things that I just listed, and substance was the solution, and it was a solution for a long time, right? The rest of the world's looking through a door and saying, Jennifer, your life is, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is still the solution. We're still good.
So with regards to, well, firstly, I mean, having a brain tumor and coming away from that after an operation, props to you, because that's a very strong woman right there. Like, fuck. But before you had this moment of like realization that, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, how long had you been on the opiates before? So that's sort of goes with my thought pattern, because, well, firstly, I think the I mean, our NHS is pretty crap, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the drugs they give us are not as addictive as the ones you can get in the States. I will say that.
This was in the early 2000s, right? Also, before sort of the opiate crisis in America started to happen. And I tell people, like, so I had been on them for 2 weeks and probably had a tiny bit of chemical dependency, but my addiction was rooted in this emotional addiction, right? This solution to all of the pain that I had been through in my life. And no doubt I was physically addicted, but that's not what started the ball rolling. What started the ball rolling was this emotional addiction that I had.
I think unknowingly the physical addiction was probably there. I speak to my uncle a lot about this thing, because he was addicted to the nose powder. Again, can't really say it too much. And he said it was very much like, one day you do it and you're like, that's cool. And you do it the week after. And then you go, I'm going to do it Saturday, Sunday. And then it's like, after Saturday, Sunday, it's like, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And next thing you know, you're doing it 7 days a week. It's it is a slow process, and very much obviously it's if you're prescribed something by a doctor and you're taking it because you're told to take it, right? Again, big pharma. I've got a problem with you as well, but we can't get
Yeah.
into that, right? But I think it's very, very similar in a sense of you're just taking it, and your body's now craving it and needing it without you even knowing, because you're always on that high. So like, again, allegedly, I've smoked marijuana once or twice, allegedly.
Yeah.
And
You had.
yeah,
If I had smoked it.
yeah, it feels fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like it does. Like everything's like, everything you touch, you get an extra sensation, and you're like, whoa, this is, I mean, you'd never want to be like it 24/7, but you can understand where when somebody takes drugs specifically is why they'd go, oh, I'd do that again.
Mm-hmm.
You,
Well,
you
and
know,
for me specifically, so in my 14-year addiction, I was prescribed everything I ever took, right? And
so fucked up.
if I were to list to you right now sort of what I was being prescribed, you would lose your mind. And again, this was in the early 2000s in the United States of America, where we had what we now call the opiate epidemic. People were being overprescribed, and I wasn't being overprescribed, I don't think, in a malicious way, but I had this medical condition that nobody could figure out. And I was going to the Mayo Clinic, which is one of the top research sort of hospitals in America, and try to find a solution, and nobody could really figure it out. And so in order to help me, they were continuing to prescribe. And of course, as they prescribed, it took more and more and more and more. And, you know, I could go on and on and on about that sort of experience that I had with our medical community while I was going through that. But it just was what happened, right? It just, I was overprescribed, and I became the villain in that story, right?
Yeah.
Because somebody gets to the point and they're like, oh my gosh, she's a drug seeker. Well, yeah, I am now a drug seeker because you helped me get there, right?
Yeah.
But at some point they are like, oh, we want nothing to do with this. So for sure it was a journey with the medical community here. But I what you're speaking about is when we started this thing, I was like, well, this is okay, right? Because they're telling me to take this many every hour, so, you know, then it feels like this is okay. And it was okay until it wasn't. That's, I think, the problem with this whole thing is it was okay until I was like, oh, well, now we need more, and now they don't want to give it. And that for sure was one of the reasons why I ended up getting sober. But I do want to touch on this because I think it's an important part. October of 2016, I found out that I was my son's drug dealer.
Fuck.
To speak about this addiction without sort of adding that piece to it feels like it wouldn't be complete. So I found out in 2016 that my son, it had become his solution as well, right? He had watched his mama do life by getting high. When life was good, she got high. When life was bad, she got high, right? She did all of the things. And when he started struggling with his own mental health and depression and anxiety when he was a teenager, he started allegedly smoking marijuana to help manage some of those mental health stuff. And then it grew into me being his drug dealer. And I don't say that lightly, right? That's not a gotcha. That's
no.
The truth of my family. And I wish I could tell your audience that the day that I learned that I was my son's drug dealer, that was the day that I stopped. I wish more than anything that I could say that, right? I wish more than anything that I could say, I loved my son so much that I was like, what are you doing? And you got to, but that would be a lie.
Yeah.
Because I continued to use for several months after I found out that he was addicted to my opiates. And he was definitely a catalyst for me to start the process. But if I look at the darkest days of my life, and I've shared with you some pretty dark things, if I look at the darkest days of my life, it is when I realized that all I wanted to do was to not be my parents, right? All I wanted to do was to be a mom that gave their kids a different life than I had been given. And I did the opposite of that.
Well, firstly, it takes a lot of courage to say what you've just said. So without sounding patronizing as fuck, like, well done. Not a lot of people would even open up and talk about half of the stuff you've spoken about, but that is, that's deep shit. And I mean, yeah, all props to you. I'd love to like clap and stuff, but it'd probably fuck the audio. So, but no, generally, I try not to make a joke out of everything. So, but no, genuinely, like, you should be so fucking proud. Like, yeah. Now, if you're happy to, what was, like, when you say you were your son's drug dealer, in what dynamic, in what sense, how was that a thing?
Yeah. So again, he started allegedly smoking marijuana when he was about, I can't really pin down a time for him, but I think somewhere around 15. There is an epidemic in at least the United States of America. I don't know where you are. We have young boys specifically. I mean, girls are doing it too, but the studies are really coming from a boy place. And we've got young boys that are starting to smoke marijuana at a pretty young age, and it's changing the chemistry of one's brain. So you talk about my son. So he has the biology, obviously. He has the trauma, right, that we talked about. And then now at such a young age, the marijuana is, this is the marijuana in America right now is not the 1960 marijuana that our grandmother and grandpas were smoking, right? It's a different strain. It's doing different things, and it is changing the chemistry specifically of these young kids. And so he started smoking, I think 14 or 15. And it was around the 17 age, maybe late 16s, when he started dabbling in opiates. Now, this is the thing. It wasn't hard because the majority of my time I was laying in bed, sometimes passed out, right? He tells a story that he came home from school one afternoon for lunch with his girlfriend, and I had fallen down the stairs and passed out at the bottom of the stairs. And he picked me up and took me to bed. And while he was walking out of my bedroom, he just took my pill bottle, poured it out, and carried on. Right? So it wasn't hard. It wasn't something that he had to work very hard at. And as soon as we figured out what was going on, we started to do things like put him in the safe. And then he would figure out a way to get in the safe, right? Like, us addicts are very resourceful human beings, right? If we need to find our substance and get it, we will get it. And that was true for him too. And so, and we started to have peers of his, like, reaching out to his sister, like, something feels off. And so it just kind of, like substance does, right? None of us start using substance to become an addict. None of us start drinking alcohol to become an alcoholic. Like, there's not one human being on this planet that does that. And it wasn't his either. He was seeking solution to mental health and to trauma that he was experiencing because I was his mama. And it just continued to snowball to the point that it became a very serious problem.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak in a sense of, like, what you're talking about. So when I used to I got home so many times where my mum's been drunk enough where she's freaking slit her wrists and crazy shit, and I've had to call the ambulance, blood's everywhere, or she's just passed out going pretty fucking nuts. So I can understand exactly what your son went through. And listen, it is shit. Like, I'm not going to lie to you, it is shit, and I'm sure you're fully aware of that. So touching on sort of that side of it, I'd like to talk a little bit more about like your life and how the addiction affected your life when you were down this path of substance abuse and whatnot. Like, is there any sort of, did it affect like your work? Did it affect your family? How what sort of things was going on in that sense?
Well, yes to all of that, right? That's just the way addiction works.
Yeah,
At
of
least
course.
my flavor of addiction anyway. I got married when I was 23 years old and was a stay-at-home mom. I mean, lived the dream. You talk about like, I believed that I had broken all the chains, right? Like, I had an incredibly loving marriage. I was a stay-at-home mom for these two babies that I just would leap out of bed in the morning to get to be their mom. There was no real substance in our home, right? There was some occasional drinking or whatever, but it wasn't impacting anything. Um, and so that sort of root of my family was the absolute dream. That, what I fantasized about as a child is kind of what I had early on. And then I got sick and everything changed. And I think, for if I could speak for my husband, and I can't, but I'll try. The component of this thing that was challenging was, yes, I was addicted and all of these things were falling apart because of it. But I also had this medical condition that was tied to this addiction that kept him, like, he loved me, right? Even though I was burning things down everywhere I looked, there was like still this component that I had this medical condition and that I was, somehow not as responsible for my addiction as I should have been, maybe. And if he was sitting right here next to me, he would admit he is the best enabler on the planet. So if my prescription was due at midnight on a Tuesday, he was there at 12:02 picking it up in the morning, right? Again, he loved me, and I was in pain, and I had this condition, and so a lot of this played on for quite a while, longer, I think, than probably it would have had I not had this medical condition, because I think people had a lot of empathy and compassion for that piece of it.
Yeah, I get what you're
So,
saying.
and even my kids, my daughter would tell you that it wasn't until she was in high school. So when I got sick, she was 5. It wasn't until she was in high school that she remembers having an understanding that's like, this has nothing to do with that. She's a drug addict, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like years, decades later, she put the connection to that this didn't have so much to do with my medical condition anymore. So I think that played into my family dynamic a little bit longer, for sure. When I got sober, I had been married for 21 years, and I believed that as soon as I left that facility, I was going to be given divorce papers. Like, I had put my husband through it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
Right? Like, he was over me. Like, he didn't want me to die from addiction, but he was so over me at that moment.
I mean, what a guy for sticking with you, though.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
you
No.
know,
Well, and the fact is, I'm happy to report we're still married.
woohoo! Big up Jennifer's husband. Like, come on, that's
Yeah,
no
we
good.
did it, right? We walked through that, and it's one of the hardest things I've ever done is rebuilding that relationship
Of
and
course, yeah.
regaining trust. I tell a lot of alcoholics and addicts that I have the honor to speak to now. It's like, a lot of people, when they get sober, have this mindset that it's like, okay, I've been sober for 15 seconds now. You need to stop being so angry, right? Like, that was all in the past. Like, can we move on? And that, for some reason, was not the mindset that I had. In fact, still to this day, there are times where either my daughter or my son or my husband still have to have a hard conversation with me about how they were impacted. And I'm still open to hearing those those stories, those, their need to continue to have conversations. Now, have we moved past it? For the most part, we have, right? And partly that is because I wake up every day with the mindset that they deserve a living amends. Like, I do this work today. I try to help families because of them, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I want to help the version that they were when I was walking through my addiction. And so mostly we have healed from this thing. We have moved past it, but there are still days where they have to have difficult conversations with me about something that I said that was triggering to them, or something that I did that was triggering to them, or they're pissed today because they even had to experience that. And I continue, and God willing, I will always continue to be open to those conversations so that we can heal together.
Yeah, nah, that's a great way to deal with it, because like you say, some people do just think that, oh, I've quit, like that's it, it's done, it's over with, and that is not the case. I mean, I've got a friend myself actually whose partner, she's an alcoholic, and unfortunately, somebody who has tried to become sober so many times and has failed is very hard to trust. So he breathalyzes her every day after work. He will breathalyze her, and it is shit and it is hard. But like you say, addicts are very resourceful and they will do anything. I mean, it was only last week that turns out she had a drink, and it's like shit. So, and again, addiction can last a very long time, and I personally won't sit there and say someone's always an addict. I will just say they're recovered. Some people view it differently, which is absolutely fine. Which actually takes me to my next question: is what steps did you take to recover, to become sober? Was it facility based? Was it meetings? How did that happen?
So I initially, my son graduated from high school on a Saturday, and I checked myself into a facility the very next day. And that didn't happen by accident. That was pretty purposefully symbolic, right? So when I went into that facility, it was, how am I going to use like a gentle lady? Because I had no intention of like giving up substance altogether. Like, that wasn't the plan, right? I just wanted to lower my tolerance, get so many drugs out of the house so that it wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be a trigger for him. Use more normally, if you will, right? And so I went into the idea that I'm going to like save my son. After months, I finally got there, right? I'm going to go save my son. And after spending 28 days in that facility, I realized that the only way to save my son was to save myself. And what happened in that facility was I started to understand that for me, the opposite of my addiction is in fact connection. And it's a three-pronged idea, which is I needed to connect to a higher power or something spiritually, right? And I'm let's create and figure out whatever that is for you personally, right? So I needed to find that because I believed that my higher power had basically abandoned me when I was that little girl being sexually abused by my grandfather, right? Like,
which is totally understandable.
Like that for me, that was the ultimate, you really aren't lovable. Like, you really are a piece of shit, right? Because look, your higher power abandoned you. So that was my mindset. So learning how to connect with this thing called a higher power, learning to connect with other people, because, right, I was an isolator and I believed that the only person that was going to take care of me was me. And so starting to put my toe in the pond of, can I trust? Can I lower these walls a little bit and start building connections with other people? And then the third one was authentically building a connection with myself.
Yep. Okay.
Which required those other two. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it just did, right? That was kind of the third one on the list because I had so much shame. Some shame I acquired from other human beings that weren't good human beings, and some shame I compounded on myself through my addiction, right?
Right.
So I just had this boatload of shame that needed to be dealt with. And in order for me to connect with myself authentically, I had to start working through some of that shame. So I got out of that program and went to an outpatient program that I really met my people, right? The people, like my people that I got sober with, that I would lay in front of a truck for, that understood my shame without me having to try to explain it to somebody.
Yeah.
And that began and then I also did 12 steps. So again, I'm one of those people, you can recover however you recover, right? We all deserve to walk outside of this hell that we're in. I just did it through a 12-step program. And so through sponsorship and working the steps, and I believe that the steps for me were the greatest gift that I was ever given. I tell everybody, like anybody over the age of 15, I think should have to work some variation of the steps, because it works on that connection piece, and then it works on our shame piece, and then it works on how do we make it right with the world, and how do we start, and then now that we've done that, how do we live life so that we can maintain our sort of peace and serenity. And so for me, that's been very helpful. And then the third part of this that has been so important, that is also tied for me through the steps, is just this service, right? It's like making sense. I created a lot of darkness in the world, right? I created a lot of trauma, if you will. Like the path that I walked, there was devastation all the way around. And so one of the ways that I am able to make sense of any of that now and help with my shame is to serve humanity, right? To bring light somehow to it, to try to help people that are walking through something similar that my family and I walk through.
Yeah, no. Again, like you say, not everybody heals from addiction the same way. There's AA, which some people thrive on, some people hate. I mean, unfortunately, AA does have quite a low percentage of recovery. I think obviously the first thing is you've got to be willing. You've got to be willing, to get through it, pass your addiction,
Well, I think
ready to quit.
the other thing about AA, if I can say that, is it's that sometimes it's a multitude of things, right? It's not just AA, it's service, and although service is a part of it, but like can be outpatient, or it can be, right? Like there's meditation, or it can be a multitude of things that comes together. And so sometimes the just looking at it as from an AA perspective can be challenging for people. But I also want to say look, I've heard a lot of people call 12 steps like a cult. Like I validate that some people feel that way, and that's okay too. Like let's just figure out what can help you heal and start there.
I mean, it's individual for everybody, isn't it? At the end of the day, like it's like I mean, for me personally, believing in any god, for me personally, seems very cultish. Like I'll be honest, like I've watched enough Netflix documentaries, and every one of these Netflix cult documentaries starts as a religion. So I'm like, I'm staying away.
There are a few of those, yes.
So I personally would deal with things totally different to anybody else. So to the just to quickly touch on like the 12 steps program, what is that? Because there might be some people who don't have a clue, and personally I'm not too au fait with it. So if you could just a little sort of idea walkthrough would be great.
Yeah. So AA is based in just a community of people that are like-minded, right? That have these 12 steps, and they are written in order. So you don't get to do step 9, which is one that you hear about, which is making an amends to somebody, until you have works 1 through 8, and that's on purpose, right? So the beginning of it is finding a connection and an idea of surrender, right? Understanding what I have control over and what I don't have control over. And then the steps work you through that. And then they talk about like, where are your resentments, and where have we made some decisions in our life that maybe looking back, we have some shame around or we regret, right? So we do that, and then we work through the amends part. And then the last 3 steps are really like, how do I take this information and this new mindset and just go out into the world, right? And I continue to do things like reflect and serve other people and have a connection with my higher power. And for me, it now is a way of, it's a tool, right? It's
Yeah.
just like the other tools that I have. So meditation is a huge tool for me now because I still have pain, FYI, right?
Okay.
Like stopping to use opiates didn't take my pain away. So I still have pain. And so like meditation has become a huge tool for me to deal with my chronic pain, right? So the 12 steps is just another tool that I had in my toolbox to be able to help me sort of find some peace and serenity.
Okay. No, that's interesting. And like I say, it's very hard because I feel like I'd be the person who'd be like, nope, I'm done, I'm quitting. And I did that with smoking cigarettes. Like I was just one day like, done, I'm out, see you later. So, and it doesn't make anybody weaker or stronger. I think everybody's just an individual person who will deal with it a different way. And how is it that your son, because how's your son got on? All good, past the addiction, and how did he?
So my son got sober in September of 2020 during COVID. And so he used for another 3 years after I used. And that was for sure the most hell I've ever been in my life, was those 3 years after I got sober and no longer had this only coping skill I ever had, or the only coping tool I ever had was substance, right? That's how I dealt with all things. And so I'm dealing with the heartache of my son kind of walking through this during that time without sort of that security blanket. I am so, so, so grateful that he ultimately decided to get sober. He is thriving right now. He has
Awesome.
a year-old little girl. He's purchased a home recently. He and his girlfriend are doing really well. And not to say there aren't journey, right? Because this is the thing. And I want to touch base about something that you said, which is some people stop using cold turkey. And that is for sure true. But I do want to say this to your audience, which is substance is not the problem. Substance is the solution to the problem. So if I only have one coping skill, which is opiates, right? When life is good, I get high. When life is bad, I get high. When I'm sad, I get high, right? It's the only coping skill that I have. And I remove the coping skill and I do not add something else on it, right? So I just stop using, but I haven't added anything. Sometimes we're just sober, but we're in hell.
Yeah, those demons are going to come back and
We're
you're not going to be able to...
Right? Because I don't have any coping skills to deal with my shame. And I don't know how to deal with deep sadness and deep pain or deep regret, right? Substance was the only thing I did that with. And so when people just stop using, I love that they can do that. But oh my gosh, please, 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 please find something to add into your life that is a coping skill for those hard times, right? A lot of us use substance because we are pain adverse. We don't know how to deal with our own pain, and we don't know how to deal with somebody else's pain. Like, we're typically really deep feelers, right? We love really hard. And so when we take the substance away, but we don't have anything else to add, like the empathy and compassion that we feel, the depth of it sometimes can be burying. And so if your audience hears anything, substance is not the problem. Substance is the solution to the problem. So when we stop using substance, we have to add something else into our life in order for that to be the solution now.
Yeah, I agree. I'm in total agreement. I think that with a lot of things, actually, like, you know, I put a recent post out about antidepressant medication. I'm like, dude, why are you taking these meds unless you've got a chemical imbalance? Because you could see a therapist. All you're doing is the doctors are giving you a solution.
Yeah.
They're not fixing the problem. They're looking at the symptom, not the illness.
I do think, though, if you have a chemical imbalance, they are super, 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 super important.
Yeah, I did have to highlight that massively when I put the post out, of course.
Yeah.
But again, like, there's so many, and doctors do it, people do it. Everyone looks for the quick solution. Some people don't want to do the hard work and actually find the root cause of this issue, you know. So definitely I agree with that. Is most people who are addicts have, like you've said, a deeper trauma, and they need to fix that trauma as best you can, or learn a coping mechanism from that trauma that isn't your addiction of choice,
Well, and
essentially.
I think this is true too. Like, again, I've had the blessing of talking to hundreds of addicts, right? And one of the things that I think is so interesting is when we are in our disease, or even growing up in our childhood, and this was true for me, like it felt like my life was hard. But if I looked out at everybody else, it felt like theirs was easy. Like I felt like I was broken and I was the only one having to do hard, right? I was hard adverse for sure. Like I didn't understand why life felt so hard for me. It was like everybody else was given a manual at birth. Like, if your heart's broken, page 154, if you have a flat tire, 35. And when I was born, it was like out of print, right? And they're like, oh, sorry, you're going to have to do this on your own. And the truth is, sobriety is hard. Waking up some mornings, even after all of the work I've done in the years that I've been sober, waking up some mornings and feeling buried by shame. And what am I going to do with it? Right? Like dealing with disappointments, dealing with watching my son go through his life and all the fears that are attached to that. It's really hard to be sober and to be in recovery. But you know what is also hard? Being a drug dealer, or a drug user. Really hard. Super hard. Like the darkness and the shame and all the things, like it's miserable. Nobody will tell you when I was using it was the time of my life. Like nobody, at least at the end stages of their addiction. And so today, every single day, I get to wake up and choose my heart, because we're not getting out of this thing without it being hard.
No, yeah, no.
But many addicts believe that they're the only ones doing hard. And if your listeners are out there today and they have thought that about their life, I want you to know it's hard for all of us. It's not because you're broken. It's not because you're not good enough. It's not any of those reasons. Life is hard. And we just have to choose which direction of hard we're going to go in today.
Son. And again, like I do want to talk about Rise Addiction and what you're doing for the people and helping people. And I just sort of want to say again to the listeners, I know I've said it before, but there are a lot of coping mechanisms some people use. They just want to make, some people see it as you need to make your mind stronger so you can deal with this, which is absolutely fine. I mean, my advice to people is what I've seen has helped a lot of people is journaling, working out, grounding,
Meditation.
nature,
Yes.
walking, all of these good things that are free.
In my language.
It's completely free to do. It doesn't cost a thing other than time, but that would have only been time you would have been, strung out or whatnot anyway. So look into these things. And from this point, I'll let Jennifer talk a little bit about what you can do to help with your struggles, and also tell us a little bit about Rise Addiction and what you do and what it is.
So my website is www.riseaddictionlc.com. And what I'm doing right now, and let me share this story and it will make more sense. I had been sober for about 6 months. I'm driving in the car with my husband and I'm telling him all of the amazing things I'm doing. I'm like on this natural high. I'm like, I'm meeting these people and we're working on this and I'm learning about shame and I'm doing all of it. I was just so excited. And he looked at me as the broken man that he was in the moment. And he said, I'm so happy that you're experiencing all of this and finding the people. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I've been along with you for the last 14 years too. And I was like, oh, right. I just felt this, not only sadness, but this just almost responsibility to become this light for families, or at least help in the healing, right? Because the truth is, as a family member, we make a decision every day whether we contribute to the problem or we contribute to the solution. And walking this path with your addict, a lot of the times is counterintuitive. What I'm supposed to be doing, especially as a mama or a dad, is sometimes counterintuitive to what our society has told us parenting should look like, right? What society has told us love should look like. And I'm not a tough love kind of gal, but there's some counterintuitiveness to this. And so I needed connection to get out of my isolation as an addict. Families need connection to get out of their isolation of what addiction has created in their life. This can be the most isolating experience of one's life, and they don't have ever need to have taken a substance on their own. And so when I walked through this with my husband and have seen the impact that my children have had from my addiction and my impact that I had with my dad, and my grandfather and all of those things. And now my impact as a mama and what that has felt like walking through my son's addiction. It became something I couldn't deny. I was like, this is exactly what my purpose is and what I need to go do. And so at Rise Addiction, again, riseaddictionlc.com, that's what we do. So I have individual sessions where I can meet people, and I've never done it in the UK, but there's no reason why I couldn't help somebody even in the UK, right? I help people all over the country, and I help people in person as well. And so it's individual sessions to sort of learn how to set boundaries, learn how to not be pain adverse, learn to stop enabling, learn to start building true trust and rapport that's not attached to somebody's potential, and starting to really meet people where they're at, right? Like their authentic versions. Another thing that we do is we have coaching calls. So twice a week, we have people from all over the country that jump on and are like-minded people that get to connect and build that rapport and community. And then additionally, the third thing I do is I have these retreats every 6 months where people, again, come from all over the country, and we get to be in person together and, do the meditation and the wellness and the learning and all of those things together in the same environment, which is pretty magical also. So it is something that just lights my soul on fire as I am helping people find peace. And that to me is why I have walked through everything that I have walked through in my life. And now I have that mindset, right? Which is, yeah, would I go back and maybe not be sexually abused? Yeah. But you know what? If I hadn't been, I'm not sure I would be here with you today. And I'm not sure that I would be able to connect with those folks that have had similar experiences, right? Same with my dad's alcoholism, same with my own addiction. And so now, instead of looking at those events as the worst events of my life, I look at them, and this is the God honest truth, I look at them as a blessing. And I am incredibly grateful to have experienced that, just so that I could be right here, right now, helping other families navigate this thing.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal way of looking at it. Everybody's got a path, in my opinion. Everybody's got a path, and if you look back in regret, you're just gonna put yourself down anyway. So you just look forward, people, and everywhere where you're at today, you have been led there by something. Like I said, I don't believe in God, but I believe in something. It's just my God, so I don't have to cult up with anybody. Yeah. And I mean, what you do sounds amazing. I mean, the retreat sounds phenomenal.
It is.
That sounds
Pretty
great.
Phenomenal.
And so, with regards to like what you're doing at the moment and things like that, what would some pointers be to give to people who are, recovery and things like that? Is there any sort of specific daily routines that you would suggest, anything like that? I know it's not one shoe fits all, I understand that, but like I said, like things like, I don't know, meditation, grounding, journaling, all that sort of thing, what would be things that you would suggest?
So first I want to say, if we're not growing, we're dying. Like literally, right? Like think about a flower. If we're not growing, we're dying. And that has been true for my life. And I was so uncomfortable with change and so uncomfortable with being uncomfortable that I, in fact, didn't grow and then was dying, right? Like in my addiction. So if I were to say to anybody, and in all of the different ways we recover, is that if you're not growing, you're dying. And so we constantly need to be pushing ourselves into an uncomfortable position, right? So I often say, if I'm uncomfortable, I better be doing it. If I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes me uncomfortable. I ran a half marathon a couple of years ago. Why? Because I knew it was going to make me so uncomfortable. And in fact, it did, right? But that was the whole mindset of, it's like, I need to do this because I need to push myself out of my comfort zone. And so still today, that is my mindset. And again, that doesn't, I don't care how you're recovering, that can be true, right? That can be true as human beings, somebody that doesn't even have a substance problem. But the things that you spoke to are it for me, right? It's the meditation, the journaling. There are people that hate journaling. And I want to ask you this question. Do you think that journaling is something that needs to be like publishable when you're done journaling, right? Like so articulate, so beautifully written that a publisher would come by and say, hey, can I use all your journals to like make this book? Like, that's not what journaling is, right? Journaling is messy. Journaling is misspelled words, not articulate sometimes. Sometimes it's scribbling. Sometimes, right? It's literally taking something out of the subconscious into the conscious by writing it down.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, if I have a client that's not willing, at least to explore journaling, and it makes people uncomfortable, it's like, I can't help you unless you're willing to do some of these things that is going to push you outside of your comfort zone, right?
Again, it's an uncomfortable thing.
Journaling is a huge one. Huge. Again, meditation, nature. So, you speak to, I don't believe in God, but I believe in something. That's so true for so many people. And nature is that something, right? Nature is where they feel sort of that spirit or that bigness or the groundedness. So that is a big one. I think connection is a big one. So who are we connecting to? I wouldn't suggest that your desire to connect with people that you have felt like you're a square peg in a round hole for your whole life, like that might not be the people, right? When you're getting sober, you need to find like-minded people. Oftentimes, if it's substance you're recovering from, then find somebody that's also struggling with that and connect with those people, a new group of people that are not necessarily your family of origin or the people that you feel square in the round hole with.
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially with like the connecting with people, I think is because there's so many people who, go into recovery and they're so scared to meet people who that they isolate themselves because they're like, oh, I can't be around this guy because he does this, or I can't be around this guy because he goes to the pub and these sorts of things. So I think definitely, and again, the boundaries is very much like David Goggins says. I'm sure you've heard of him, but mind calluses. Yeah. You've got to build those mind calluses. Like my friend Dave, again, I use it. He's like such a phenomenal guy since recovery, and what he does is unreal. So I do talk about him a lot, but he jumps in a freezing ice cold shower every morning, and he says every morning it fucking sucks, but you're making your mind stronger. And that's what it's all about. And that it's not just for recovering addicts, it's for everybody.
For humans. Yeah, it's for mankind. And that's, I think, one of the greatest things about being in recovery is it's like, I see that now, right? Like, I see that I'm not the only one that was going through a hard time. Like, as human beings, we struggle with this stuff. I just found my solution because of my biology and my trauma, right? And some people don't have that particular struggle, but the mind is a struggle for all. And so these things work for anybody, whether you're struggling with just you're down in the dumps right now, or you're going through a divorce, or you're becoming an empty nester and you've had kids for all of these years and now you don't know what to do with yourself. Like, these principles work for all of those people.
100%. I mean, is there any final messages that you'd like to get out to people? I have a final question for you before we end, but I'll let you say your piece.
I just want people to know that they're worth it. I just want people to know that even if you are in a dynamic where you people aren't exuding your worth back to you, that does not mean that you don't have worth, right?
100%.
And that we are broken humans walking through the world trying to make sense of all of this thing, and sometimes my brokenness will make somebody else feel unloved or unvalued, and it's just not true, right? You have worth, you have value, and you deserve peace.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. I've started this new thing. I spent like the past like 3 episodes, and what I like to do is ask people at the end, just for a little bit of lightheartedness, and also to find out a little bit more about the person. What would your perfect day be like from start to finish? You don't have to be like super explanatory, just like a few pointers. I'm going to say I'm saving mine for a special occasion, maybe episode 50, everybody. So, but yeah, what would your perfect day be like? How are you waking up? What are you doing? How are you starting? How are you ending? I love this.
So there is a little city that has a big lake. It's a recreation kind of place about 2 hours from me. And I have a lot of history there as a child. Again, that's some dichotomy of my childhood, is there was some good and not so good, right? And sometimes
100%.
those things happened in the same place. And this was one of those places. But I would have my entire family. So all of my nephews, my kids, my family, right? And we would be on the water, on the beach, jet skiing, having fun, eating snacks, and like understanding the roots of my history, like all of it. So I learned to swim in that lake. Some bad things happened to me, and all of those things are still true. Good and bad. And that would be the place that I feel closest to my God, and having all of my nephews and my sister and her husband and just everybody there would be the best day of my whole life.
Fuck yeah. Sounds awesome. Sounds amazing. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure.
It has.
Genuinely, like, the more people I speak, everyone's just so nice. Like, I've never met so many nice people since podcasting, so it's great. But no, you've been like super open, and just show what a strong woman you are is phenomenal, and how you've got through the things you've got through. And it is, what we're here to do is try and get the rest of the people to be as strong and get through these things. But it's unfortunate that 70% of people probably wouldn't at the moment. But yeah, I will put your website in the description so everybody can get it. And as always, people, thank you for listening. We appreciate you being here. And if you've got this far, do not forget to like, comment, subscribe. And I'm on all the socials now: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'm everywhere. So just find it, share it to your nan, share it to your dog, share it to everybody, share it to your friends. Because I do believe what we're doing here is for the betterment of people. And if you shared it to 100 people, it could help one, and that's more than enough. So I appreciate you all watching, listening. Love you all. Bye bye.